The way the market rolls, so that's all right. So next topic is our restructure. So in 2011, and I'll just take you on a bit of a journey here to tell you how Cattle Council got to where we got to with why we're doing what we're doing. 2011, many of our state farming organisations weren't able to contribute our membership fee as that's been set since I can remember it. The global financial crisis had limited our funding we were getting from the Red Meat Advisory Council, which we get to do our strategic planning. And the Indonesian issue we discussed earlier was highlighting the limitations that Cattle Council had because of our limited resources. At the same time, Scott Hansen came in and took MLA back to basics as a managing director, trying to make sure that his company hadn't overstepped the mark that I showed you before, the line between what a service provider is meant to do and what a advocacy group is meant to do. So there was a bit of a vacuum there, and we're still trying to work out how best to fill that, and I'll show you how we're going to do that later on. So we had a AGM in Longreach, and the industry said to us we want reform, and they were really strong about, we think that the levy that we're paying should be able to fund at least some of what Cattle Council does. So we met with the government, and the government basically said, we can't even talk to you about anything to do with that until you guys go and get yourself a strategic plan. So we did that, and that's the process we went through. I'll try and keep this short. So we had 1,000 producers attend producer forums around the country. We did online consultation. Another 1,000 producers contributed through that process. We had interviews with key stakeholders, workshops, surveys, you name it, and we came up with Beef 2015 and Beyond, which is the grass-fed beef industry strategy, and available on our website, and we'll be working to that up until 2015 when we do our next plan. So once we had a plan, we put together an implementation group for our restructure. So as we developed the plan, we asked producers what are the outcomes they would like to be receiving from a new restructured organisation. So we put these guys together, and it's a bit of an eclectic bunch of people that have been involved in state farming organisations, that are anti-state farming organisations, and from all around the country. They came up with a structure which we put out to our stakeholders, including SFOs. That was leaked to the media, which was unfortunate, but at least everyone got to see it. And that was based on accessing 38 cents of the levy to undertake strategic policy development on behalf of the industry. So not advocacy, but to develop policy, which you would then take using other money and advocate. And I'll talk a bit more about how we might do that again later on. So we couldn't get industry to agree on that. They couldn't agree on how much we should get out of the levy, and they couldn't agree on a structure. So we went to the minister anyway, and basically they told us that if you don't have unity with the industry, we can't help you. If you can't tell us exactly where you want to go, then it's difficult. Unfortunately, when we met the minister of the day, it was actually Ludwig's last meeting before he was removed from office, I guess, or from the ministry, on that day when Julia lost her job, and so it was quite good because he was quite forthcoming with some more information that perhaps he might not have been. And what he did is he gave us a few ideas about where we could look and what we could do within the current legislation. So we took those ideas and we started talking with DAF, and we went back to our strategic plan, and we sort of said, oh, what are we trying to achieve here? What are we trying to get done for the industry? And what they said to us in their planning was they want change, they want a single voice, they need us to be relevant, representative, and they want to feel like they've got control over their levy. So that doesn't necessarily mean that all the levy money comes to Cattle Council. I think that's more about them feeling like they can engage with the organisation that has a role of overseeing their levy, and perhaps that means Cattle Council's communication and consultation processes aren't as good as what they should be. But how do you resource that? That's when it all comes down to it, the problem with the structure is money. So we kind of realise what they're actually saying is we need to reprioritise our funds. So we've got a $5 levy. It's not $5 doesn't become more as inflation grows. So we need to make sure that we're spending that $5 better every year, and making sure that the blend's the way the industry needs it at the time. So we worked out what Cattle Council really does, and we talked about the advocacy below the line. But we actually have 4 functions. We're advocates. We also do all the strategic planning for the industry. We do all the industry management for the industry. So we sit on over 60 committees where we're talking about whether the NVD should have a different signature or another question, or whether the ear tag should be red or blue, and everyone benefits from those functions that we do on behalf of industry. And then we develop policy, and policy development is actually a really long process, and as I said, it culminates in advocacy at the end, but the actual communication and discussion and development of policy before that is actually a function that we have now learnt could be funded through socialised mechanisms. So to be very above the line, below the line sort of talk again, this is the advocacy function that we have, this is the strategy function, the management function and the policy function. And what we've been able to do is isolate where we receive money for all of these functions. So our state farming organisations contribute to us for the advocacy function. Our Red Meat Advisory Council contributes to us for strategy, and up until recently that was it. And then what we've actually been able to do is create service agreements with our service providers, MLA, AHA and NRS, to fund our industry management function, which is completely legitimate and done within many of these organisations like horticulture and grains and other areas as well. But what we hadn't really worked out is how do we fund this policy, and can we do that better? And so what we found also was we were spending the money we should be spending on advocacy down here on this policy work because we didn't have money coming from somewhere else. So we were poor advocates because we're too busy working out what we're going to be talking about. So we've been able to sit down with DAF and work out that MLA is able to fund a lot of that function. They are able to invest in R&D that provides recommendations to Cattle Council that we can then go through those recommendations and form a policy on behalf of industry, and then use state farmer money or producer money to advocate that policy position. So a reallocation of those resources has enabled us to remove the issue of whether we should be accessing the levy or not from the debate, and that was the bit of the debate that was really clouding why Cattle Council couldn't move forward in a restructure. Having removed that, we've been able to get ourselves a new structure. So what we've agreed, and this was last Friday, is still needs to be ratified by our members. So my board has put a peg in the sand and said, here's our preferred model. Now the state farming organisations need to vote on that, and we need to get 75% support. So we're hoping that in 2 months' time at our AGM that will happen, and this will be the structure of Cattle Council moving forward. So we're hoping to implement paid direct membership. So if you're a producer and you're a member of a state farming organisation, you can join for free. If you're not a member of a state farming organisation, we're going to ask you to contribute $100, and for that you'll be able to contribute directly to Cattle Council, be involved in Cattle Council in every way, stand for boards, stand for committees, and get involved in our producer forums and our national conference. You'll also be able to get involved on our new website that we're about to launch, which is going to be, in my view, a really massive step forward in how we develop policy in this country for cattle producers. It's difficult to communicate with people because it's such a diverse countryside. Now people are going to be able to communicate with us on a daily basis and be able to give us their views.